Okay, here we go. Hi, Gemini. This one's for you. This is Terra Lumination with your Jupiter and Scorpio report for 2017-2018. It's a long 1 year transit, so we're going to make the most of it. This idea here is just to get you kick-started, get in the right groove, the right direction, so you can make the best of it. Of course, that's what Jupiter wants for you. Well, just look at it this way. Let's break it down, themes and keywords. This is the planet Jupiter here. Let's just say these are the energies that Jupiter radiates, the classics, well known, the great benefic, good fortune, expansion, travel, healing, opportunity, higher consciousness, bringing it down from above, seeking it, finding it, and bring it in for the rest of us, and more. So now imagine that as fuel, and you're pumping that through the lens or the nozzle of Scorpio, which would add these energies to the expression of the Jupiter fuel. Typical Scorpio energies, the power, the intensity, the emotions, the joint resources, the deep merger here, the energy of transformation, birth and destruction, and ultimately transformational healing, the highest form of expression of scorpionic energy. Okay, so for you, Gemini, what's it all about? So we just did a very simple doodle here. So this would be you, Gemini, here, sun, moon, or rising, whatever. And then what happens is, this is your sixth house. It's going to transit your sixth house over the next year. So the sixth house, what is that? It's very much to do with day-to-day practices and habits of getting through life in a way that's practical, effective, useful, in service to others, in service to your environment. It's the house of work, chores, activity, habits, really good habits, sometimes really bad habits. It's the house of purification, cleansing and refining, sifting and cleansing. It's very much to do with healing as well. The actual practical applications of healing practices in practice. So there's going to be big shifts and growth and expansions in that way in your life, Gemini. That hasn't happened for about 12 years or even 24 years, but it's going to happen and there's no going back. It's very transformational because it is the energy of Scorpio and there is no going back. So if you could take that energy here, I was going to say, if you have to pause, stop, rewind the video if necessary to get everything here. I'm trying to squash a lot into very little. Take the energy, the fuel source here, pump it through the nozzle here of Scorpio, and apply that to this part of your life over here, the sixth house, everything that we just described, okay? So that's what we're going to do. And so, because this is Tarot Illumination, we're going to give you a little tarot reading. Okay, just kind of like what we do already. And cards are already pre-shuffled. And we're just going to keep going. And we're going to do it, live for you so that you're a witness. No jumpers, no flyers, no oracles, and no reversals, okay? And we're just going to do the best we can. And you can reinterpret however you want, okay? It's your reading, Gemini. We're just doing this as a favor for fun for you. So make the best of it. Cards are already well shuffled. Here we go. Cut and deep cut there. Okay. So let's have a look. What's going on? Here's your situation. Here's your opportunity. Of course, Jupiter. Here's the challenge because there's going to be a lot of transformational energies that occur here. Okay. And so this is how you're going to make the best of it so that it works for you. All right, so Gemini, let's have a look. Let's have a look. Under here, we're going to look at the prevailing conditions, the weather that is there, and you're going to make the best of it, okay? It's not going to own you. So with the Four of Pentacles, this feels like it's a real chance, an opportunity to lock it down, make it work for you, stabilize things, get your life in order when it comes to health, when it comes to organization, purifying, cleansing your life, tidying things up so that it's much more stable, solid, and simpler and effective, and also much more healing for you. And of course, you don't want to overdo it with the Four of Pentacles, because it's very much about power and structure here and locking it down, like building a really good foundation for a skyscraper. You don't want to mess with that. You can have the most beautiful skyscraper, but if the foundations are not good, forget it. So, in your situation, it is about solidifying things here in very practical ways. Taking all this Jupiter energy, pumping it through the power, like the nozzle of transformation, where there will be a lot of transformation that's going to happen, and it might be very emotional, it might be very intense, and it might be like feel very disruptive, but it's actually very good for you. Okay, Gemini? So you're going to allow that to happen without grasping on too tightly, without thinking that you have to hold on to the existing status quo, which could be another way that you could look at this. There's no point in holding on to the status quo because it's going to change. There's no way out of that. So the best thing to do is let this power and this energy flow smoothly and gently in very methodical, practical ways, so that it turns into a very stabilizing new way for you to conduct yourself through this part of your life, especially when it comes to health and healing, purifying and cleansing your life, and creating newer, better habits, and destroying and removing obsolete, redundant, unhealthy habits. So what's the situation? Okay, with the Seven of Swords here, to me it feels right. It's about think smarter rather than working harder, so to speak. In other words, you're going to have to be very, very careful that this energy that's happening here, this opportunity, this transit, doesn't trip you up, or so in other words, you're not going to allow this to trip you up, because it could very easily trip you up. It's a big sweep of energy. It's a big shift of energy. And Gemini, you might not typically relate to or understand the Scorpio type of energy in the normal way. So because you're a Gemini, it's a very different type of energy. Gemini and Scorpio are very, very different. And so it might make you feel as though like you're being messed around, like somebody somewhere is messing you around, trying to push you in a direction or a journey or an evolutionary path that you don't want to go. And so you might be looking for ways to get around it or avoid having to take that path. And, trying to be very stealthy about it, very clever, very smart about doing it. And that's not going to help you at all. So, because it's self-defeating behavior, and you don't need that. So, like, with the situation here as the Six of Swords, to make the best of this, it's going to have to be on the understanding that it could be very emotional. It could be very intense. It could like take you into these dark places that you don't like and you don't want to go. And that in turn takes you deeper and deeper into this side here, where you're going deep into soul energy, soul merger, which may not be at all appealing or even comfortable for you. Like you didn't even ask for this. I don't even want this. I'm a Gemini. I don't even want this, let's say. So, but since it's inevitable, it's going to happen anyway. The point is to allow it to happen without trying to avoid it, or without trying to get away with like sneaking around it, so that you don't actually have to deal with the pressures of transformation or the huge like emotionally intensive circumstances that you might have to endure as you go through the big shifts and changes here. There's no way out of it. This is the Scorpio energy here is automatically to do with transformational changes, transformational healing. So it's you might as well just accept it as what it is rather than fight it. It also could indicate that a good way to deal with this is from a very intellectual perspective. So it doesn't have to feel as though your whole body is being swept along in ways that you don't want. If you treat it as a chance for, okay, I'm going to have to deal with this. I'm going to look at this from a very, very, like the Gemini perspective, from the intellectual perspective, so that it doesn't overwhelm you or like trip you up, okay? Let's have a look. So what's the opportunity here? Assuming you can handle this and assuming you can figure it out and you find out ways to make it work for you as opposed to tripping you up. What is the opportunity? Okay, it brings you into a chance of finding and discovering, let's say, emotional healing, emotional mastery, coming into, let's say, your like a state of dignity where your initial fears of transformational healing and the whole of this scorpionic type vibration, which you may not really be interested in at all, but if you can see it as an opportunity, it can really, really kind of like open up your heart energy much more than you've ever had a chance to do before, to the point where if you've been used to dealing with heart energy in like an intellectual manner, which is, you know, I guess, okay, but it's better to deal with heart energy, you know, rather than try to intellectualize it or talk about it. Live it, feel it, allow it to feel and flow. Again, you might not like it because it's disruptive, it's too intense, it's too emotional. It's much more fun to talk about it and play with it and have fun with it and live it out as an activity. But instead, you're being invited to, like, one way or another, there's no way around it, coming into deep, deep, deep soul merger contact, primarily with yourself here, okay? But you might experience that as health issues. In other words, anytime there's a health issue, you might realize that it's ultimately so many health issues come down to what hurts in our heart. What have we allowed to contaminate us? What have we tolerated that is not really effective or true or honorable for us, or from us to others, or from others to us? But it's just been accepted for so long as just status quo, but that's not good. It's not healthy. This is a chance to really cleanse, purify, open up the heart, and attain some mastery in that level. Because you're a human being too, you know, Gemini, you're made of flesh and bones. You got a big fat heart just like the rest of us, okay? But you can get so swept up in the like the intellectual aspects of it all, or the fun of it, to the point where it's almost like you deliberately avoid the deeply emotional aspects of things. So the challenge would be, let's have a look, juggling that reality. Like, it's like, okay, Gemini is saying, well, okay, thanks, Tarot Illumination, but how am I going to do that? Well, that's cards coming up over here. So your challenge is finding a balance between what comes naturally to you, which would be maybe reading about what needs to happen, talking about what needs to happen, listening about things about what needs to happen, but maybe not actually doing it because you're thinking, well, that's just enough. Well, the reality is it's not enough. The reality is you do have to go deep in. You do have to experience that like deep soul awakening that's going to happen to you regardless. So instead of fighting it, the challenge here would be like, okay, just accept that this could be like disruptive to you in what you would call your heart area, even though you might sense it from the intellectual approach. And so the challenge is basically struggling with it, dealing with it, which you, in ways that you might feel is a balancing act between, well, shouldn't we be doing it this way or that way or that way? Or so what am I exactly supposed to do? Am I supposed to quit smoking? If so, how or when? Or am I supposed to stop, you know, doing this habit or that habit, even though I think it's actually pretty good for me, you know? So there's an intense pressure to clean up, clear up, upgrade, especially from the heart, and which means the challenge is having to face those emotional issues, all that heart energy, the turbulence of intimacy and separation, joy and sorrow, that is the everyday experience of the heart. But it might have been neglected for a long time. So the challenge is coming to terms to balance with that, balancing heart with mind, okay? Heart with soul, heart with, basically rising to the challenge so that You're not doing everything out of your brain. You're actually integrating your whole body into a healing process instead of reading about it. I know that sounds strange, but I'm trying to turn it into a practical application. Your challenge is the practical application of the Jupiter in Scorpio transit in such a way that it does work for you and you do get the chance to tune into that opportunity and rise into your sovereign self, so that as a Gemini, you can still have the biggest, fattest, most loving heart as anyone else, and it doesn't have to disturb you or disrupt you. You can handle it. You can handle those emotional currents in ways that you might have never been able to do before. And you can train yourself into do that. You can learn, you can study, you can go into, higher ways of learning, higher ways of being in order to, let's say, improve your health, improve your attitudes. A lot of health is to do with attitudes, making the right decisions about what to do and how to do it. So how are you going to move forward with that? Make the best of it. Okay? Understand that in the end, it all comes down to heart energy. Tarot Illumination is very much about the healing power of love, okay? And ultimately, healing directed and focused at the heart, the center of it all. Most of the readings are done as heart readings from the energy of the heart, because without the heart, there's nothing. You can have the most amazing brain on the planet, but if your heart stops beating, there's nothing, okay? You can do all the meditation practices if you want, but if your heart stops beating, there's nothing. Okay, so this is actually a swords card. So the way to handle it is understand and accept that huge amounts of pain and suffering and conflict and misunderstanding in our lives might be perceived through our physical senses, but they end up lodged in the heart. And if there's anything unhealthy there, that will end up as heartache, heart pain, heart attack, issues of health with the heart that need to be addressed. So since it all seems to be coming down to the heart energy here, healing of the heart, growing into heart energy, becoming sovereign owner of that, then the best thing to do is acknowledge that there may be pain and suffering in the heart. You may have been trying to avoid it. And it's okay, because all of us hurt at some level at the heart level. And the whole of the thing about Jupiter and Scorpio is about transformational healing. So if you could see, hopefully, please, Gemini, see this disruptive, disorienting journey over the next year as a chance for deep transformational healing when it comes to the heart, literally the physical organ of the heart, and how that heart energy translates and radiates throughout your life, okay? Okay, if you have to, rewind and watch, so you can see all this again if you have to. And please make the best of this. Reinterpret however you want. It's your reading, all right? Thanks, Gemini. Bye.